Welcome back to Chapter 4, Part 2 on anchoring and the mooring ball pickups. In this chapter, we're going to study a little bit more about how to anchor, as well as some techniques for picking up a mooring ball. To figure out what a good anchorage would be, we can consult our chart or our cruising guide to really get more information about that specific area. A good anchorage would be protected from the wind and from the waves from the sea, good holding ground, and ample swing room so that you're not too close to other boats or shore. I remember one year we we were going to go to Trellis Bay for the full moon party that night, and that harbor was so overcrowded there was really not enough room for boats to swing around as the weather changed. So what we decided to do was to go to over to Marina Key, which is across the channel, short drive. They have a taxi a water taxi that moves boats back and forth, and there was plenty of room over there for us to use, put our boat, and then we were able to just catch the water taxi and ride over for the full moon party that night. In addition, you should also look at the chart or the cruising guide to see if there are other underwater hazards that may not be visible. For example, if there's a cable or pipeline that's running across the area where you're planning to anchor, you'll need to move at least 20 yards away from that underwater obstruction before you put your anchor down. In addition, if there's rock and other debris that you might have to worry about, you can avoid them also. And finally, if you're in the, you will not want to put our anchor down in the middle of the channel so that you've got boats going by. For example, in many of the harbors that we go to, there is a water taxi that shuttles the employees to the restaurants back to the mainland where they live. And so that ferry path is marked on the chart, and you won't want to anchor there or even pick up a mooring ball because those water taxis throw a lot of wake and it'll cause your boat to rock and roll all night long. Here's one of the harbors that I really like. It's my favorite beach in the British Virgin Islands. It's at Cayden Bay. But it's also a little bit interesting, and it can be, some people have had some bad experiences there based upon the weather conditions for the day. So let's look a little bit about what's going on in this situation. These are two different pictures, one from the cruising guide that can kind of help us understand the lay of the land. On the photograph of the harbor, we've got the smiley face over here. When the wind is blowing out of that direction, which is sort of out of the north, those are where the Christmas winds that we've had in the past. Over there where the smiley face is, the bay is calm and really very, very, very pleasant. But down on the other end of the bay, the wind starts to build and the waves get to be fairly big. And we had a couple boats that actually broke loose of their moorings in that area because of the heavy wave pounding. And so this is an example of where the the geography of the land affects how pleasant it is going to be for you to spend the night in the harbor. Now, as we get ready to set our anchor, there are several steps we need to follow to make sure that it works well. So first of all, we got to prepare. So the first thing we'll want to do is we'll want to release the anchor from its pins that are holding it in place up on the bow. Make sure that a chain and a line are attached, both to the anchor as well as to a cleat on the deck. Then we have to figure out how much scope are we going to put out. And so this really is, if you remember from our boat handling class, it's how deep is the water, and then we multiply that by a factor, and then that determines how much chain we need to let out. The boats in the BVI are generally have chain on them rather than rope like we have in the Central Illinois for attaching to the anchor. And so when you have a chain anchor, we don't have to put out as much scope as we do when we're using rope. So typically, down in the BVIs, they use a 5-to-1 scope, whereas here in Illinois, we would use a 7-to-1 scope for our rope. And then also be ready to let the line out. Now, we also need to have a communication plan between the front of the boat and the back of the boat. Now, when Gary has a headset that he and Judy use to help communications, and several other people do too, and this helps eliminate some of the confusion of what are the people doing in the back of the boat and the front of the boat going on. When we're down there, we typically encourage a hand signal system for the guy on the bow to help communicate back. So essentially, it's like pointing the direction you want the guy in the back, the person steering, to do. So you would hold your hand forward to go that way, and if we want to go a little bit to the right, you'd point your hand to the right, left. If you want to speed up, we'd turn our fingers in the air, slow down, turn our fingers down into the ground, and put it in neutral or kill the engine. We're going to practice these in our on the water skill when we uh, down at the lake. And so now that we've let the line, we dropped our anchor down, we've let the line out, we count how many seconds the windlass is running. I think it lets out 10 feet a second or something like that. And so, we let the boat drift until we can feel the anchor start to hit, grip. And then when we think it's gripped, then we'll put the engine in reverse at about 1500 RPM and look off to the side, pick a point on a transit on shore somewhere, and see if the boat moves as the boat is powered up in reverse. You can also check and put your hand on the line to see if it's bouncing, to see whether the anchor is done. In our last flotilla, we had a couple instances where boats in the middle of the night drifted away from where we thought they were, where we had them originally set. And so this year we're going to encourage everybody to set an anchor drift alarm or some sort of thing like that. These can come in two different ways. Our smartphones have an app on them that you can set. When you drop the anchor, you can set, this is the point that I want to not get farther than 50 feet away from. And if it does, then an alarm goes off if that happens. GPS systems have similar type alarms that we could also set. And so, just as an added feature of security, that's something we probably will want to do. Now, let's spend a few minutes talking about how to pick up a mooring ball. Now, the first thing we need to do is look at, okay, our communication strategy. When I go to pick up a mooring ball, I like to have people positioned all along the boat to help communicate from the front to the back, because the bow is about, the person on the bow is about 40 feet away from the guy in the back steering the boat and operating the engine. And so as you approach the mooring ball, it suddenly disappears because the bow is hiding it away. So what I like to do is have two crew up on the bow, the bowman and then his assistant. And then I have one person in the middle of the ship to relay commands or information forward and back, and then the person at the helm that is actually trying to steer the boat and operate the engine. By doing this, then we can kind of keep everybody calmer as we go. We've got two people in the bow so that when the bowman hooks the pendant with the boat hook, he can then pass the boat hook over to his assistant so it doesn't get dropped overboard. Now, I won't say that's ever happened more than once because they don't float very well. In addition to a new addition to the area is a reservation system that you can get on boaty balls in some of the more busy harbors. This is a place where each morning at 7 a.m. you can dial in on Wi-Fi into an app and reserve a ball at the next harbor that you're planning to go. It costs about $10 more, but then that reduces the stress of having a mooring available when you get to the harbor. Many of the harbors are really busy, and if you're not there by 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, all the boats or mooring balls are already tied up with boats for the evening. I found this really good instructional video at sailingvirgins.com, how to pick up a mooring ball. And that really shows, not only describes the process very well, but it also has, it's a video so you can actually see them doing it. They illustrate two different types of pickup. The more traditional one where we drive up to and pick up the pendant and run our lines through it. In addition, there's also a method they call the lasso method, where we actually throw the line over the top of the mooring ball and then let it take the strain, and then you can casually hook up the rest of the way for a more secure approach. In addition to the process, we've got several things we want to do when we're picking up a mooring ball. We want to attach the mooring lines to the bow cleats. We want to shorten up the dinghy tow line so that the dinghy line doesn't get caught in the prop. Put our crew in the positions for communications. I like to approach the mooring ball head to wind so that the wind isn't going to blow you side to side. It'll just slow you down. We'll use a boat hook to lift the mooring ball pennant up onto the deck and then run a free end of one of the bow lines through the eye in the pennant and then cleat it off. And then we'll run another line through the pennant attached to the other side of the deck. And then at the end, the helmsman goes up and double checks all the work to make sure that it's going to be secure for the night. When we go to let the boat go, we'll uncleat the bow lines and pull in the free end onto the deck, and then the helmsman will back away. The wind will blow us away too, and then you just motor away so that you don't hit the mooring ball. We're going to also add one more step as a security to our tie-up on a mooring ball. We'd like to run a third line from the deck cleat down through the metal eye on the mooring ball, back up to the deck cleat for another safety line. This will enable, if the pendant fails, we'll still be attached to the mooring ball. This concludes part 2 of our chapter 4 on anchoring and mooring ball pickup. Please bring your questions to the next live video training session, and we'll go over the homework at that time at the end of the chapter.